We've produced a work plan on greenhouse gases so that we can constantly see and have reported out what our community is doing to achieve success in that. The urban forestry plan, again, is a very important issue. It not only shades our homes and shades our head, but provides clean, fresh air for us. We already have the electric charging policy that on new buildings, if you're building new buildings, you have to run electricity there so that people can put charging stations in as they bring in their electric vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to audience questions, just want to remind people, if you haven't had a chance to sign in, please do so we can follow up with you about additional information and events. And also, I want to clarify something I said earlier. Sunnyvale has numbered seats for city council rather than districts, so voters throughout the city are going to vote on each seat. All right, so we're moving to audience questions. You will each get 2 minutes. We're going to start with Nancy, and the question is, how do you plan to address the escalating financial challenge to the city's long-term situation posed by fire and safety personnel's pension retirement commitments? 2 minutes each. Now repeat the question. How do you plan to address the escalating financial challenge to the city's long-term situation posed by fire and safety personnel's pension retirement commitments? We will start with Nancy, and we're going to move to her left. 2 minutes.
Okay. I am looking forward to the completion of downtown. One of the ways to raise money is to do, of course, raise revenue. So it will be great to have more revenue downtown when that's ready. One way to do that is to ensure that when the downtown plan comes online, that we don't only have services like restaurants and things like that, but retail. So we've waited a long time to have retail in downtown, and we are on track to get that. We're going to at least start getting more retail. Other ways to look at that are tiered systems. Perhaps we could, when we recruit new officers, we could perhaps have training, probationary period or training period where they make slightly less money while they're coming up to speed. We've also worked on the community safety officers, which has helped reduce the funds to offload some of the work onto people that aren't officers. And I would, of course, work closely with the financial directors at the city to look at other options. I think there's ways we can look into that. It's the usual things of raising revenues and reducing costs.
Okay. I wanted to say, Nancy, you were in a real tough spot there. I think we all may find ourselves in that position here momentarily, so just wanted to put that out there. I think this is a great question. I can't recall verbatim the premise of the question. If I heard correctly, the premise of the question is that this is coming directly from public safety. I would respectfully dispute that premise of the notion. Sunnyvale has multiple bargaining units. We're all in it together, ladies and gentlemen, and the city council has to negotiate with each of the public employee bargaining units to do the best thing for the city of Sunnyvale. I am in favor of a concept called an irrevocable pension trust. I've got a minute and a half left. So what an irrevocable pension trust is, sometimes the city of Sunnyvale has a budgetary surplus at the end of the fiscal year, and at the discretion of city council, they can chunk X amount of dollars, $1 million of surplus to Sacramento for Sunnyvale's account at CalPERS. And that's the right thing to do if it works in the budget. A irrevocable pension trust, instead of chunking that money towards Sacramento, we keep it here in Sunnyvale in this irrevocable pension trust, and that serves as a smoothing mechanism. We now have money in our own bank account so that if some of the pension obligations change, people are retiring at different times that we thought the assumptions were, we have an automatic smoothing mechanism. We have the money available for the annual ups and downs. We've implemented a multiple tier system already in the past, and I think City Council and the bargaining units deserve both a lot of credit for hammering that out and working it out for the benefit of Sunnyvale. And I want to say thank you to the employees of the City of Sunnyvale. I think our professional staff here in Sunnyvale do a fantastic job for the residents, and that's the professional staff that I work with as a planning commissioner, and that we all experience, whether it's at the library, public safety, or what have you. Thank you so very much.
I understand the question is concerned about escalating pension risk. This is a big concern, right? What's happening is that CalPERS, which is where our retirement money is invested, is not hitting the return targets it's supposed to. It's supposed to be generating 7.5%, they're coming nowhere close. So every year, the amount of pension risk we have goes up. It's up to $69 million. One of the things that Sunnyvale is doing is we're paying it forward. We're paying extra into CalPERS now while we have the money to help pay down any potential spikes we're going to see. As CalPERS says, no, you have to pay more because we're not getting the 7.5% return. So that's a big one we need to do. I agree we need to increase revenue. Different ways to do that. The one, again, I'm the only candidate in favor of raising developer fees. Wonderful source of money, right? Instead of $17 a square foot, let's hit it with 30, 40, or 50. We should have more community service officers and reclassify more work to be serviced by community safety officers because they're lower cost than our public safety officers. We need to figure out how we're going to do more automation. Sunnyvale is investing a lot of money this year in updating its web services and websites. You're going to see a lot of automation rolling through all of the world in the next 10 years. A lot of people predict that 40% of jobs are going to go away, as automation enables a lot of services to be able to provided by Siri or likewise things where you call up on the phone and you can't tell that you're not talking to a person. So I think we need to be on the edge of figuring out how we're going to provide more services with automation instead of more employees. And I do agree with Russ. I think, when I work with city staff, I think they're wonderful, they're very professional, and they try and help you to the best extent of that they can. Thank you.
Have to wait for the shifting of the time clock here. The problem with pensions is nothing new. It's been around with us for several years, and in 2011 it was a prominent issue when I first ran for election. But the fact of the matter is, Sunnyvale again is at the forefront of answering these questions. What we've done is we've developed 3 tiers of employment now, or retirement programs. The top tier are those employees who have our more expensive retirement systems, and they're now they're phasing out, and less of them are a part of the system. We have a second tier where if you came from another agency that was in the CalPERS system, you came in at a lower level, but it was still a little bit more expensive than our bottom level. And finally, at the bottom level, we've developed a program that is fair and equitable for our employees, but is much more financially sustainable. The good news is that we have an actuary who looks specifically at what happens with Sunnyvale's money in regards to CalPERS. What he tells us is, and I can't remember the exact number of years, but in the future, and not so far along that we're living on Mars, but we will solve the unfunded liability for the city of Sunnyvale. So the program is in place. We're working on it. We're moving towards a solution, and I hope that by the time I leave the council in 4 years, that we'll have had a final solution to it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. As people said, the part of the solution is the tiered system. So as we're looking at the existing employees that have a certain retirement level, and then the new employees coming in have a different retirement level. That in itself, fixed by a previous council long before I got there, solved a lot of the issues. And that there's still the unfunded kind of future. Now, definitely, it's like looking at what we're going to do for CalPERS, how we pay that down. It's a long-term effort. It's a 20-year goal, and what we need to do is stay on top of our budget, take a look at where we're getting our resources, where we're getting our finances. Whatever we can do to, as other candidates have said, to increase that tax basis, to work with the public-private partnership to help defer the costs of public safety and other responsibilities within the city, and then that city funds conceivably be retargeted into help pay down the long-term retirement issues that we have. So those things working together, it's like what we can do from a financing standpoint and what we can do with the new employees, and working with developers, working with other businesses to make sure that the costs of salaries and the costs of retirement are weighed along the way. Definitely we're seeing within staff, and I've been working with staff for many years. I've enjoyed working with a lot of them, and we're starting to see a certain amount of turnover. That in itself reduces the long-term rate as we replace the older, more experienced employees with new employees with a different tier. So those things working together and monitoring the budget help us look at that long-term unfunded issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as has been said, Sunnyvale has worked quite diligently to make sure that we have paid forward the obligations that we have. All three of our funds are managed not by Sunnyvale, but by other entities. And we hired our own actuary to take a look at all of these things, and he had recommended certain changes, and so we have been indeed paying ahead. When we have extra money, we apply that. We will meet some of our unfunded liabilities in the 20-year time frame, but it looks like most of the rest of them are about 30 years out. So we pursue this, and the council is very determined, I guess you could say, to protect those funds. And we do everything that we possibly can to make sure that the money that goes in, that is obligated and we have contracted with for all of our employees at all levels, will be there when they retire, and their medical benefits and so forth. So we protect those funds very strongly. We contribute to those funds, and so things are adding out. We're also looking at the funds from the total compensation point of view and not just salary point of view. So in addition to the tiers, that's another way that we're addressing the compensation issues and the potential unfunded liability that we have out at the end of 17 to 30 years.
Hi, this is Michael Goldman again. I'm a good friend with Andy Fraser, who ran 3 years ago, basically on the pension issue. He invited me to his pension reform group, and I and a few others were kind of spreading the word and leading the charge. And I was the one usually in front of the city council pointing out this is not going to work. Well, Mayor Spitaleri and Jim Davis said, this is all going to be worked out in Sacramento and Washington. And I have to agree, they are right. So in answer to the question, nothing. You really can't do anything about the current level of retirement benefits for police. San Jose tried, and they really are having to backtrack. There's a little bit you can do for some of the big earners. The $100,000 club, the people who retire on over $100,000 a year on CalPERS, is actually mostly, at least from Sunnyvale, is mostly the senior people. The current the current city manager makes $273,000 in salary, but she gets $137,000 in benefits, and most of that's pension. What they've found when they looked at the data is that the top 3.5% of the salary people get 14.5% of the benefits from the pension fund. What we need to do is maybe say, okay, if you make more than 100,000, you got to start contributing more because you're getting so much more. And in effect, you're basically taking it from the little accountant or field worker in the city. We have fewer employees now than we did in 2000. That is going to continue. We are a fairly rich city, and believe it or not, California is better than most states in terms of their pension problems. So what is going to happen is, one by one, the states are going to get off the pension wagon that we got on. Cities around California are going to find some way to get out of it, maybe bankruptcy. And when the solution's reached in Sacramento, we'll just follow along. Thanks.
All the answers are so simple, I don't understand. We just make everybody work until they're 75, and that'll give us a chance to get all the money. I have a master's degree in finance, and I don't know how we're going to do this. So it's a function of interest rates. CalPERS is based on a formula that is not working right now, and we don't have a lot of control over that. So I think the council at least is working towards a plan. I would have to really get into it in the nuts and bolts and see if there's anything, but the reality is I believe we have a problem, and we're going to have to take it bit by bit. And I congratulate the council on at least making the efforts that they have thus far. That gives me a minute to say to our referee here, I'm sorry that you haven't had a chance to interrupt us that much. I'm sure you missed that opportunity.
Thank you. You've all been very succinct and polite. Very much appreciated. We have time for one more question from the audience, and Ron, I'm going to give you a heads up. We're going to start with you and move to your right. Tell us your thoughts on Measure M. If you are against it, please give advice to how residents can have input. When the current city council ignored a petition signed by over 1,000 people to not sell off priority access to Raynor Park. We each get 2 minutes, starting with you, Ron.
Okay, I probably won't be too popular. I do not like Measure M as it is stated. I think it creates an issue in terms of special ballots. However, I believe the idea is something that the council needs to address. And that is before lands and leases and trade-offs are done, I believe it has to be vigorously publicized, and I think it has to then go to areas that are specifically being affected and listen to what the people have to say. And I believe that's the only way to deal with it. I like the idea, I just don't like some of the requirements that go along with it. But I believe the council has an obligation when they hear from a majority of people to do something about it. And as a council member, certainly I would be that kind of person. It's tough. These things are difficult to deal with, but do we want to have special elections all the time? And the confusion that goes along with the yes, I'm for it, and no, I'm against it. And I think we need to present the options to our constituents in a way that's easily understood. It's awfully hard on all measures when each side seems to have the correct answer. I know I deal with that all the time, and it's tough. So that would be my response to this.
for the question. I worked very hard to get Measure M on the ballot. I and my partner in crime, Deborah Marks, talked to, I think, about 3,000 people. About 1,000 of them were residents. We talked to one person out of the 3,000 that thought that City Council should just have basically carte blanche to do what they wanted. The confusion over Measure M is because Jim Griffith is scared to death that it will pass. If it passes, he can't get rid of roughly half of the Civic Center, and where Jay Paul is the only person who's expressed any interest in it, would put up 2 6-story buildings and 2 7-story buildings. The confusion that Mr. Griffith is trying to generate is the distinction between lease and rent. It's confusing because both can be used as a noun and a verb. I looked up both. We have the best lawyers in the country, the second biggest law firm in the world, with specialists from every possible branch of law looking at it and making sure that is correctly written. Lease is a long-term thing, typically a year or more. Rent is several meanings, but one of them is simply what you pay on a kind of week-to-week or daily basis, or just for rent. There is enterprise rent-a-car and there's enterprise lease-a-car. They are two separate entities because they are legally two different things. So renting is not going to be going up for the ballot. You are not going to have to get a ballot initiative every time you want to rent a park space. Leasing is a long-term thing, yes, but that's typically very, very seldom done, and it is only for public amenities like parks and other green spaces. It does not apply to fire stations or anything else. So, you know, it's to me, it's a no-brainer. You want to keep Sunnyvale green, yes, on Measure M.
Well, I think Measure M, I'm opposed to it, absolutely. And I think it was based on a misinformation, and it's an honest attempt to address an issue that people feel is very serious, which is, well, at least when I was approached, it was they're selling our parks. Well, Sunnyvale has never sold a park, never will, and so that, but certainly I would have signed it if I had been approached and didn't know that. So I think it's an honest attempt to address an issue that is kind of a non-issue, and the problem with it isn't so much the foundation of what they want, what people want with this, which is a greener, cleaner Sunnyvale. Everybody can get behind that, but it is the unintended consequences of the way that it is written. And what we have there is almost every land swap or land deal that we have done, we would have to put before the populace. And we would have to get the citizens to vote on that every single time. And we just went through a vote like that. And it cost us $750,000 for a special election. Well, that's not a very effective way to manage the budget. So the ballot budgeting is not a good thing to do, and it is costly. And I think this is the unintended consequence of what is a well-intentioned activity, but the outcome of this is deadly for us. Absolutely deadly for us. So ballot budgeting just does not work.
Thank you. As far as Measure M is concerned, I'm against Measure M. Yeah, it's a poorly written piece of legislation, from my opinion, because it mixes both the for sale and the lease of land, and it applies not only to park as it's written, but also it applies to office. And so conceivably, that the final measure would apply to multiple things. Whether that is the renting of the Nova buildings, conceivably even Charles Street Garden, or the building that we're sitting in right now. And as far as the cost to the city, multiple ballot measures, and ultimately the cost of the confusion from a citizen standpoint of having to input multiple times a year and just going through a special election and having people basically yell at me because it's my special election. I understand that. I understand the issues as far as trying to meet what the requirements are for this property is concerned. And then as far as the Rainer Activity Center is concerned, it was a series of buildings that the council decided that weren't basically valuable to the city anymore from the standpoint of upkeep, and ultimately offered it to the school district, offered it to several other schools, and finally a charter school, Stratford School, was the highest bidder for that property. Now, as far as the neighbors are concerned, they were ultimately not happy initially, but I've been to multiple outreach meetings in that neighborhood, and the school has been a good neighbor, has been working with those residents to try to make sure that they're happy with the final result, because the charter school that's there, and as much as, you know, this isn't specifically about the measure, but the final resolution was that that charter school is able to put more restrictions on the parents going to that school than a standard public school. So they can actually, they made their hours earlier so that it doesn't affect the people going to Peterson. They have a number for the neighbors to call if there are parents speeding down their streets, endangering other people in that area. So it is a possible solution, and it is ultimately the final end as far as that project was concerned is actually a good thing, but I couldn't support Measure M as it's currently worded. Thank you.
Well, I too oppose Measure M. And the reason being is that it handcuffs your elected representatives in trying to deal with a wide variety of different issues that come before us at a moment's notice sometimes, and would cause us to either have to delay a program for a year to get it to a ballot, or to have a special election, which is extremely costly. If we had an independent analysis done of Measure M, it's called the 2212 report. That report is available on the website. If you want to go to the city's website and search for the 2212 report, you'll get the information. I believe and I understand why Measure M came around. We, the city, we made a mistake. You know, it was my position, you know, from the time that the council decided to sell the buildings on that Rainer property, that we shouldn't be selling the property, we should be taking down those buildings and adding to our green space. And that's been my position every time that Rainer Park has come up on the council dais. But unfortunately, you know, what we did beyond that was we wrote a special agreement with Stratford Schools that said that they had priority use of the park property. Well, if you're a resident living across the street from Rainer Park, and I now tell you that you don't have priority to use this property, that it goes to the school that we've sold the land to, I'd be pretty doggone upset too. And I understand why people got upset. You know, we were sued twice. You know, this measure came about. Hopefully it will be decided in November, but I hope that you vote no on Measure M.
I also cannot support Measure M for all the reasons stated, and I'm not going to go into that in any more detail. I think you've heard all the arguments that I'd have listed anyway. So there was a couple other questions that related to this. What can we do and how can residents have more input? These are the areas I'm going to address. One of the things I've said all along about this is it's a legitimate concern, so instead of saying that these are the only two choices, that we put it on the ballot or we can stay where we are today with complete flexibility for the city council, we could develop a policy that says how Sunnyvale will, and what Sunnyvale will do, and what criteria they'll use for selling public land if that ever comes up again. Again, the land that was sold was an activity center that was a school and went back to being a school, so I think that's fine. And if people are really adamant that we think we need more parkland, we've added 7 acres in the last couple of years. We have a lot more money, 55 million, I think, in the Parks Dedication Fund, and we're going to continue to add more parks. So, you know, Rainer Park did not get any bigger, but Sunnyvale as a whole is getting a lot more parkland than it used to have. As far as more community engagement, that's one of the issues that I'm running on. I think Sunnyvale needs to adopt technology and put it to use so people can get much more engaged, right? We're just starting to do online polling. We're just starting to do issues like taking critical issues to the farmers market so people can see the boards and vote, right? I mean, we're getting much more engaged in how to do that. We need to allow residents to dial into any meeting they want to participate in, call in. You know, you shouldn't have to come down to City Hall to say, I want to make a comment about whatever the Bicycle Pedestrian Commission is working on, right? You should be able to call in and do that from your home and watch all the meetings online, right? Skype and all these technologies have existed for a decade now, and it's really, hopefully it'll be soon when we get there. So I'm for a greener Sunnyvale, and I hope that you can get that from all the positions I've taken on all these other issues. And so I support more parkland in Sunnyvale. I just don't think Measure M is the way to go about getting it.
Great, thank you. I do not support Measure M. I do not support Measure M, and I implore everybody here when you're casting your ballots to vote no on Measure M. I was the first non-incumbent candidate for Sunnyvale City Council to put my name on the No on M website. It is a poorly written potential policy, not good public policy, and the 2 words that come to my mind are unintended consequences and quagmire. I feel really strongly about this. And I'll also point out that this is a massive policy distinction between me and my opponent for seat 5. The incumbent for seat 5 has pushed for Measure M, he's endorsed Measure M, and this is a critical policy distinction that I think everybody needs to understand. When I'm out canvassing in Sunnyvale, and by the way, I'll mention, I live right next to Rainer Park. I'm in the neighborhood. I live so close to Rainer Park, I had to recuse when it came before the Planning Commission. That's how close I live to Rainer Park. When I'm out canvassing, even if somebody has a yes on M sign in front of their house, I go up, have a conversation, I say, I respect your vote. I understand your position. I understand how all this came about. But you still need to vote for me, Russell, for City Council. And the reason you need to vote for me, even if you support Measure M, even if we disagree on Measure M, is because I know how to get things done. And one of the things I'm going to do on Sunnyvale City Council is work to aggregate strategically land for the benefit of the public. That's what I'm going to do when I'm on City Council. I'll just say it one more time. This is really important. Please vote no on Measure M. Thank you so very much.
I get the last word on this, sort of. It's coming out during the lightning round. I'm gonna take a moment here. Okay, I'm going to say that I don't support Measure M as it's written. However, I want you to bear with me on this for a moment. I hear the frustration about what Michael Goldman said and others I've talked to you in this room about Measure M, that the council doesn't listen. So if Measure M passes, I will do my utmost as a council member to uphold it because it's the will of the voters. And frankly, I'd say about half of the lawn signs, there is a lot of energy in this community going toward yes on M or no on M. And the way I look at it is I would love, absolutely love, for that much energy for yes or no on M to go into backing actual candidates. Because what the ideal is, and I've said this to supporters of Measure M, what my ideal is that you have council members who share your values. You vet the council members, you donate money to the council, and in return they listen to you, and they care about the same things you care about. When I decided to run for this seat, I did a lot of research on where funding for races came, and we have two approaches in Sunnyvale, up to me, up until I ran. We have people who self-fund and get special interest money, or we have people that pretty much don't get any money at all who run for council. I want the support of people. And I will listen, perhaps even do an ordinance if it fails, because I believe we should listen.
Thanks. All right, so we are getting close to the end. I'm going to respectfully request that folks stick around for 10 minutes past our closing time so we can get through the lightning rounds. And these are 30 seconds each, so please be succinct. Running a modern city is a complex and often unseen undertaking with municipalities responsible for delivering drinking water and removing waste, maintaining streets, roads, and parks, providing public safety and library services, etc. Meanwhile, this is the hottest year on record. California's climate-fueled drought continues. California's forest fires and Louisiana's flooding have been described as beyond normal experience. And this summer sea ice cover at the North Pole tied with 2007 to the lowest on record. Where would you rank systematic action to reduce your own community's contribution to climate change among the city's other responsibilities? And what would you think about making climate action a strategic priority of council at next year's strategic planning session? You have 30 seconds each, and Jim Davis, we are going to start with you and move to your right.
Well, thank you very much. I do support the concept of a strategic planning session in regards to the climate change. Fortunately, we live in Sunnyvale, and as I've talked to you in the past, and I'll say again today, right now, is we're facing those issues. We have staff and people that are looking at those in the long term, and we're on it, and we're going to continue to be on it. Thank you.
I would rank it high and make it a strategic priority for the council. Sunnyvale should include requirements of SB 32 and figure out how we're going to get there. Global warming and climate disruption is a challenge that's critical to humanity to figure out how to solve this problem. I think I've made it clear, because I'm the sole endorsee by the League of Conservation voters, that they trust that I have the right ideas and policies and procedures to deal with climate change issues, right? I've proposed over 20 different policy ideas that you could adopt to help deal with climate change.
Thanks, John. I'm endorsed by the League of Conservation voters, my 5 pillars for quality of life: environmental sustainability, fiscal responsibility, smart infrastructure, manage balanced growth and land planning, and compassion for community. I've been saying for months that climate action should be a strategic priority of the City Council at next year's strategic planning session, and if you elect me, I will take action. Thank you.
I have been endorsed by both League of Conservation voters and the Sierra Club, and one of the reasons for that perhaps could be my experience in reorganizing committees. And one of the things that I would like to do is look at our committee structure in Sunnyvale. It hasn't been really looked at since I've been in council. I would like a sustainability checklist to be de rigueur on all of the commissions.
I heard someone say it doesn't exist, but we all know, we feel it. And yes, I think it has to be a high priority among our city, county, state, and federal government. And we need people to recognize that it is in fact here, and we have to deal with it.
Well, I've already expressed my opinion. We need to be carbon neutral. There's a lot we can do. Actually, other cities have already done it. All we have to do is follow their lead. Require solar panels on every new building, require charging stations at every hotel, not just the wiring for them, but the actual stations. The cities around us, like Cupertino, many of them have plug-in hybrid vehicles, so that car basically, little city car running around the streets is all on battery until, after 30 miles or something. So it's a key issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And And yes, I support the climate change as being a critical action. In fact, I would aim towards net positive, not just net zero. And as we expressed in City Council, we do want that to be a priority. Our city manager has said, yes, we need to do some work to embed this into the DNA of all our policies and procedures in the city. So we are moving forward, we're doing the right stuff, we're moving in the right directions, and I think we need to do both systemic and systematic.
Yes, I also support strategically looking at what we can do as far as climate change is concerned. It's not just for us, it's for the future generations. You know, we have conceivable sea level rise, what that's going to affect the north end of our city, what that's going to do to our city overall, we all should be worried about right now. And so it's critical for council next year and upcoming years to make that a strategy as far as the city's concerned, staff, commissions, and everything. Thank you.
I'm making a suggestion to our clock keepers that the next lightning round is also 30 seconds because we did hear your positions on Measure M. So again, 30 seconds. Larry, we're going to start with you. And it is, so Measure A is a $950 million affordable housing bond. Measure B is a $6.5 billion transportation sales tax. Do you support or oppose Measure A and Measure B, and why? Larry?
Sure, in 30 seconds, yes, I support Measure A and Measure B. I've endorsed both of those. When I'm walking precincts, I take the Measure A and Measure B material with me to try to educate the citizens on those critical features. Getting, basically $950 million bond, getting a half-cent sales tax, those are critical infrastructure and dealing with a portion of our society that the homeless and low income that need housing within our communities. Thank you.
Yes, I have supported and endorsed both Measure A and Measure B. Measure A, we're actually already paying for a lot of the homeless issues. It is actually cheaper for us to be able to house the homeless rather than to continue to support the emergency services. On Measure B, it's the transit bond, and it's a public-private approach to getting things done. I may not like all the charges, but I don't see a better way.
AB, yeah, sure. Measure M, I have to refute some of what's been said. Nobody up here, none of us, is a lawyer. Pat Myron is a lawyer, he teaches law, and he's certified to argue before the Supreme Court. More importantly, we pay for a legal opinion, which we are not allowed to see. The people for Measure M want to release it. The people against Measure M want to hide it. That tells you something about the legal opinion that we pay for and cannot get. Thank you.
Let me make it unanimous. I do also support both measures. Obviously, I've already stated my views on transportation, and we need to spend the money there, and it needs to be used wisely so that we can do something about our transportation and traffic. So I support both measures.
Under my watch, I'm going to claim some responsibility for Measure A on the water district. We had a homeless impact on the creek for Coyote Creek, and I believe that actually led to Measure A in some means. I would not only support it, I also want to use Measure A to support the survivors of domestic violence here in Sunnyvale. And yes on B.
Thank you. Yes on A, yes on B. We also need to please vote yes on N. N is in November. That's a very important Sunnyvale measure. I'll just say, circling back to Measure M, I'm not an attorney. I'm not qualified to argue before the Supreme Court, but you don't have to be an attorney to take the advice of the Sunnyvale City Staff Legal Department and to render good judgment. So thank you.
I have endorsed both Measures A and Measure B. We definitely need to do more to provide affordable housing in Sunnyvale, and I've talked about a lot of policy issues that I think would help us do that. And I also want to work to end homelessness in Sunnyvale by 2020, and I think that's a goal we should all adopt as a strategic imperative. On Measure B, there's a lot of traffic money being spent in there that I don't support, but that's part of the deal. I don't think we should be spending that money on expressways. Instead, it should be spent on transportation systems. You build more roads, you just invite more cars.
I guess it's too late for me to change my position on A and B. I'm a strong advocate for both A and B. A gives us a pot of money that we can actually do some building with and build affordable housing. B is going to solve a lot of the congestion on a lot of our roadways and expressways and give us money that we can use to improve the transportation system in the city. So yes on A, yes on B.
All right, thank you. We are moving on to closing statements where you will each get 1 minute. Nancy, I'm giving you a heads up. We're going to start with you. I just want to thank all of you for sharing your vision and policy ideas about these critical issues facing Sunnyvale. So including these or other issues, what would be your top 3 priorities if elected to council? 1 minute.
2 seconds.
Okay.
What happened? You guys were so great.
Thanks for sticking with it. So I really appreciate it. You listen to us. One of my #1 priorities is to have a council that listens. And I will fight to make sure that all voices are heard on Sunnyvale City Council. Secondly, I am passionate about working with sustainability and the environment, and I will really push to get us to beat the target for SB 32 by 2030. And lastly, I want to work with the city council, my colleagues, to make sure that Sunnyvale is a city that communicates. So not only do we listen, but I want a city where it's easier to find information and know what's going on and know what's important to each of the groups represented. In short, I want Sunnyvale to be a place that we're proud to live, a livable place with a great quality of life for everyone.
Thank you. Sunnyvale is an extraordinary city. It's a great place to live, work, and do business. I want to keep it that way, and I want to improve it for future generations. On November 8th, 2016, I ask you to vote for me, Russ Melton, for Sunnyvale City Council Seat 5 so I can get to work for you. My top 3 priorities: housing, traffic, complete the downtown. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. I hope I was able to inspire and inform you. I have a positive vision for Sunnyvale, and I encourage you to vote for me to help make it happen. I have laid out a lot of specific policies which would improve life for everyone here in Sunnyvale. Voting matters. The best way to get the Sunnyvale you want is to elect the candidate who has convinced you that they have best vision and commitment to push that forward. My top 3 priorities for Sunnyvale were covered very well tonight. I'm in favor of improving everyone's quality of life by reducing traffic. It's also great for the planet, a real win-win. Make Sunnyvale more sustainable and, by improving affordable housing and more transit options. I've stated one of my policy objectives to improve community engagement. I've talked about the reasons why we can do that. There are some key policy differences between me and the other candidates in my race. I support rent stabilization to help keep people in Sunnyvale from being forced out of their homes and from skyrocketing rents. I want to increase office development fees to slow growth and fund more transit and affordable housing. I have demonstrated my commitment to help create a greener, healthier, and happier Sunnyvale.
Well, my top 3 priorities is public safety. You know, in the past 5 years, or in the years before, even before that, we had to decrease a lot of our services. We need to increase our traffic unit from 2 to 5. We need to increase. We need to put in place a burglary suppression team that we use in the winter months during the holidays that was extremely successful and should be year-round. We need to develop our hazardous materials team in the fire division. On the other two issues, of course, I've spoken about them numerous times, and that's Measure A for housing. We really need to do things that are responsible for building new homes where people who live and work in our city can raise their families here. And B, for the wide variety of transportation issues, including Caltrans and the Lawrence Expressway improvements and our roadway improvements. So thank you very much for allowing me to serve.
Thank you. My top three priorities are the same three priorities that I had in the August special election. Number one is to finish the downtown. It's the heart and soul of our community and provides critical sales tax and TOT dollars so that we have the money to do all the other things that we want to do in the city. Secondly, of course, is traffic. Managing growth, making sure that the traffic issues within the city are being looked at. As we talked about earlier, looking at a city's shuttle, looking at basically making more walkable communities. And lastly, of course, is beyond that is the affordable housing. So I've been an affordable housing advocate for years. I've worked with many nonprofit housing organizations to try to encourage them to build within Sunnyvale. And I hope that you will vote Larry Klein for seat 4 in the November election, and also vote, of course, for Measure A and Measure B. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As my top three priorities for the council and for our action are globally, we're looking at climate change. And so we have a lot of things that we can do here in the environment. We have the clean energy, we have the fuel switching, we have recycled water, non-potable and potable water. We have greater local control and regional sustainability, fighting sea level rise with our salt marshes, and the watersheds and protecting them from clear cutting and maintaining and replenishing the aquifers. Regionally, it's traffic and transit. We're working on those, and housing and affordability. So I have the experience, the knowledge, the ability, and the willing to work. And I am respected locally and regionally for my work on these issues. So I ask for your vote on November Rage. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Goldman. I'm running for the same seat she is and that he is. And if you are happy with the last 5 years and you think that's just fine, everything that's happening, overcrowded schools, traffic's a mess, vote for the incumbent. You get 4 more years of the same. If you think it's time for a change, that's me. I want to say one more thing about Measure M. The city's legal staff has given their opinion and is pretty innocuous. I have no problem with it. The other staff is scared to death they won't be able to sell all the parks to fund the retirement. So I don't know who you want to believe. Anyway, I think we are looking at too much at Sunnyvale as if it were an asteroid floating in space. We are part of an $8.5 million person Bay Area. We have to work together. We can't take all the growth here. There are a lot of places that would like the growth and have the space for it. We are out of space. Thank you.
Wow, a minute. I do support our police department. Our public safety is in need of additional help. I am certainly for affordable housing. I've talked about traffic. And what got me started in this whole thing was affordable housing, and particularly at our senior parks, or our mobile home parks, which are really manufactured parks. My home is 2,000 square feet, so they're not trailers. 400 acres has been set aside. That takes care of the 3 largest parks. That leaves 9 parks that are not covered under those 400 acres. So I do first want to hope that the council does quickly take a look at the rent stabilization of our parks.
Thank you. So just a couple quick things. I just want to remind people that voters can throughout the city can vote on each of these seats. We have to be out of here by 9, so if you can help us by picking up any garbage and recycling, that would be very much appreciated. I want to thank all of you for staying with us till the end, and please join me in giving a warm thank you to
Your time.